Right, so blood, the river of life. And why do I say it's a river of life? So, when we're looking at the body, we've got about 5 liters of blood running through about 60,000 miles of blood vessels. And that 60,000 miles is if you line them all up and put them together, kind of in a one long line, it will be about 60,000 miles. Um, and just like the river, it provides life to everywhere its tributaries goes, So everywhere you see the river flow, you get life. Where you don't see the river flowing, you get kind of degradation, you get death on the other side of things. And you just have to compare the Amazon rainforest with plenty of rivers with the Sahara Desert or places where there's no water that flow. Just like the body and just like our blood, when we're looking at our blood, wherever the blood flows, it provides life. Wherever blood does not flow, you get cell and tissue death. So when we're looking at our blood, what makes this blood so special? What makes this elixir of life so magical and wonderful? And part of that is the different components that blood has. So when we're looking at the blood, we can see that it's mainly composed of about 55% of plasma, and about 45% of red blood cells. And within the plasma, there's other things. There are things such as all the hormones. It helps to take out waste from the body. It helps to provide nutrients to cells, you know. It also makes up the volume. So, when we drink enough water, we get better blood flow because our volume's less viscous, less sticky. And when we're more dehydrated, we get other problems like sluggish blood flow, which we often will feel as we become a little bit more sluggish in our cognition. So we've got the red blood cells, which also, its main job is to carry oxygen around the body and provide oxygen to all the cells. Um, so red blood cells is one component. Then we've got the plasma. So these two make up the bulk of our blood. But we've also got a smaller percentage of white blood cells, which are very important for our immunity, and platelets, which are very important for clotting. So if we cut ourselves, we need something to stop the bleeding, and the platelets will help to clot our body or clot the tissues and form a scab, etc. All right. So when we're looking at the blood, we can see that blood, and especially red blood cells, our white blood cells, etc. This is actually made in our bone marrow. So when we're looking at our bone, we've got the harder part of the bone on the outside, so this provides us with protection, and this harder part of the bone provides us with a framework for our system to have a certain particular structure. But then within the bone, we've also got a more spongy part of the bone, a softer part of our bone, which we call the bone marrow. And within the bone marrow, we've got the yellow marrow, which is where, our is comprised of things like fat. And then we've also got the red marrow, which is where our red blood cells are produced. So when we're looking at our red blood cells, or in fact, let me take you to the image here. Here you can see all the bone marrow, and this is actually where stem cells will be differentiated into the cells that are required for the body. So when we're talking about stem cells, we're talking about cells that are very immature, cells that can be whatever the body needs it to be. So stem cells will turn into our red blood cells. They will turn into our white blood cells, and throughout the body, they will basically turn into any tissue where it's required. So it is within the bone marrow, all of this area here, this is where the red blood cells are white blood cells and everything is being made. Yeah, and when we're looking at our red blood cells, they have a lifespan of approximately 120 days. So 120 days, that's about, 4 months. That's a third of the year. And what we can see here, this kind of donut shape, and this donut shape allows oxygen to be bound within the structure of red blood cells, which you might see depicted by this illustration here. And when the red blood cells are traveling through our body and it's carrying oxygen, it's able to give oxygen to parts of the body where oxygen is required, which is basically all our cells, tissues, and organs. As our demand for oxygen increases, so will our blood flow increase through the beating of our heart. And also, we will get an increased blood flow wherever there's an injury, etc. So if you can think of when you've banged your knee and it's bleeding or you've got a bit of tissue damage, it will always be followed by some aspect of swelling because that's more blood flowing into the area and also depositing all the nutrients and making the tissue in a more alkaline state for recovery to occur. So, the journey of red blood cells. So I'm going to play the video and it's just going to give a nice animation just to show you how blood travels around our body.
Veins are blood vessels containing blood flowing to the heart, while arteries have blood flowing from the heart. The blue is representative of blood vessels containing deoxygenated blood, while the red blood vessels have oxygenated blood fresh from the lungs. Now, let's follow the path of the blood through the heart. The superior vena cava receives blood from the head, neck, upper limbs, and chest. Meanwhile, the inferior vena cava receives blood from the trunk, viscera, and lower limbs. Both the superior and inferior vena cava end up in the right atrium, one of the 4 chambers of the heart. The heart not only has 4 chambers, it also has 4 valves. The purpose of the valves is to keep blood moving in the right direction and not flow backwards. Blood exits the right atrium through the tricuspid valve, so called because it has 3 flaps, and enters the right ventricle. The blood exits the right ventricle through the pulmonary valve and enters the pulmonary artery. Again, it is an artery because blood is flowing away from the heart, but it is blue because it lacks oxygen. The pulmonary artery then splits into the left and right pulmonary arteries, which go to each respective lung. In the lungs, gas exchange occurs. The blood discards carbon dioxide and picks up oxygen. Now, blood comes back from the lungs through the pulmonary veins, entering the left atrium. Next, the blood is pumped into the left ventricle through the mitral or bicuspid valve. Finally, the oxygenated blood leaves the left ventricle through the aortic semilunar valve, entering the aortic arch. The aorta, which is the largest of all the arteries, distributes the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. The aortic arch has 3 major branches, which supply the head and arms with blood. Then the aorta curls downward behind the heart, forming the descending aorta, which descends through the chest and continues down through the abdomen. In the abdomen, the descending aorta splits to supply the pelvis and legs with blood.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe.
All right. So yeah, that's a nice, simple animation of how blood travels throughout the body.
Veins are blood
here. So what the video doesn't show is basically what happens on a more cellular level. So it showed beautifully that how blood travels around the body. But what actually happens is the blood turns into smaller vessels. So as we can see here, this is blood traveling away from the heart to the cell and through our arteries. And then just like the river, we get the big rivers, and then we might get smaller offshoots of the river. Just think of the River Thames, or maybe a nicer river. And then these smaller arteries then turns into capillaries. And it's at the capillary level, they're so fine and they're so small that it's easier for gas exchange to happen. So in the lungs, for example, when blood is going to the lungs to receive new oxygen, for a fresh supply of oxygen for the body to benefit from, we can see that the lungs, the trees of the lungs, the trachea, branches and gets smaller and smaller and smaller until we get these alveoles, which is basically what we call air sacs. So this is the alveoli here, and then this is the alveoli here. Yeah, that's another representation of it. So as where red blood cells are going into the lungs, they're depositing the waste, CO2, and they're getting a new fresh supply of oxygen ready to be delivered throughout the body. Yeah. And then when they pass off their oxygen, they again branch off and turn into smaller capillaries. And when they turn into smaller capillaries, then they give their oxygen off to the tissues, because tissues need a constant supply of fresh oxygen for the process of generating energy, etc. And when they give off their oxygen, they then become deoxygenated and then return through our veins, ready again to return back to the heart, return back to lungs to get a new fresh supply. And that cycle just continues forever and ever until, a body transitions. So, bearing that in mind, what we see now, especially with, the current climates we're living in, the sedentary behaviors, the poor eating habits, the lack of exercises, and a lot of other things out there, is we're seeing our streams becoming polluted. And we know when this is the case because we feel it, Our body is forever detecting where we are, is forever giving us feedback on the condition of our system. So when things are not right, we're going to feel the effects of it. If our blood is not flowing healthily, then we're going to get more aches, pains. We're going to feel that our brain's a little bit more frazzled. We're going to feel low energy. But when our streams are clear and our blood is clear, we're going to feel lighter. We're going to feel more vibrant. And we're going to feel a lot more chi flowing and energy flowing within our body. So what we've got here, we've got various things that pollute the streams of the blood. So diabetes is one of these metabolic diseases. It's not just about, sugar, candy, but it's a disease that literally affects the whole of our system. And it does that through the way of our blood. So what we see with the rise of glucose in the blood, which does not have the ability to be released into the tissues or released through waste, what we then see is an acidicity of our blood becoming a little bit more supporting the nature where bacteria can thrive. And we see that over time, high blood sugar, it causes basically our vessel walls to be damaged, to be a little bit more stiff, and then also to over time start to build up unwanted substances like plaque within our blood vessels, which just basically make things a little bit more harder. So harder in the sense that when we've got anything that's building up in our blood vessels, it can eventually lead to blockages, which can lead to other problems. And mainly these problems are tissues, blood vessels, and parts of the body then starting to necrose, which means basically starting to die. So here, what we've got here, we've got basically a image of a normal foot, and then over time, how poor circulation leads to the development of ulcers, and the development of ulcers then lead into things like gangrene setting in the foot, and then necrosis in the foot, basically causing the foot or the tissues to die. So you can practically have a healthy part. You can practically, let me rephrase that, be alive and still have dead parts of you on your body that will literally just drop off. And even before it drops off, doctors will basically amputate the area just to save the rest of the system. So when our circulation is not working well, it can lead to big problems. That's just more of a image of ulcers developing. And, you know, working in the NHS for so many years, you've seen people that have had to have amputations. You've seen people with ulcers that's just never ever healed. And you see that it causes such a big problem on someone's mobility, pain, and their quality of life. So here, gangrene is the death of tissues in a part of the body, and that's basically what it is. And it's a dangerous situation. And again, that's all linked to blood not flowing to an area. The tissues need blood. So when we've got a lack of blood flow, we've got to really pay attention. So this is the plaque I was talking about earlier, call it atherosclerosis. And depending on where it builds up, so if that builds up in the feet, and then you've got a blockage of blood flowing to the feet, then like the last image, you get things like gangrene. But if this happens in the wrong place, in the lungs, if this happens in the brain, if that happens in the heart, then you're either going to have a heart attack, a stroke, or what we call a pulmonary embolism, which is a blockage in the lungs. And these things are a medical emergency because they will cause death or a change in the quality of one's life. And, you know, at this stage, it's just about where it happens. And the body's not discriminate. It will do its best to make it not happen in the most vital places. But a lot of the time, through constant abuse, the body often has no say in the situation. But, you know, when I've seen strokes, it's one of the most avoidable things that can happen. There's different types of stroke, but ischemic stroke, you know, it is so unavoidable in a lot of cases. But on the flip side, blood is used for healing. So when we've got good blood flow, you know, our skin is more vibrant, we feel better, we breathe better, you know, we recover from the gym a little bit better. And what we can definitely see is that through injured limbs or injured parts of the body, we want to increase the blood flow. And it's not just increase the blood flow or any blood flow, but we want to increase the blood flow with good things in the blood, because this will help us to recover better. So when we're looking at just the whole process of inflammation, the body naturally does that by increasing blood to the area. And the blood is going to carry all the good nutrients through the plasma, etc. and then that's going to increase the rate of recovery. But that also depends on how good your blood is and how clean your blood is. So the cleaner the blood is, the better and more efficient the healing is going to be. But when we see people who are diabetic, if they gash their knee, it's going to take longer to heal. So it's very important in that aspect that we keep the rivers of life clear. So what we do, either through manual therapy, myself, with the treatments, all the treatment modalities I use is really to increase the blood flow. So acupuncture needles, as well as working on the pain modulation and helping one control pain better. Inserting the needles is going to increase blood flow around the needles, and that's going to promote recovery around that area. And massage does the same thing, for fairer skinned people, or even, sometimes darker skinned people, especially if you use more force, you will see redness around the area that's treated. And often, for myself, it's a good indication that, okay, treatment has been good and treatment will be successful compared to an area I might treat, and I'm like, okay, maybe I might need to do more to stimulate the blood flow. Then, we've got electrotherapy, so through the use of therapeutic ultrasound, and again, the waves bombarding the tissues will again induce a healing effect and will send blood through to the area. Same with cupping. Cupping will do the same thing, literally as if the suction and effect will kind of draw blood out of the capillaries and around the area of tissue that's being cut. And then this is an image of dry cupping, but you've got hijama cupping, which is literally a technique where you will scalpel the skin, which will literally make blood pour into the cups. With the theory behind it is taking more of the toxic blood, the denser blood, the blood with impurities out of the body to make the circulatory system much more lighter. So how can we promote good circulation? Exercise is so key, very, very key. My favorites are all of these things above. I like starting my morning off with Tai Chi because it's a nice exercise to get the blood flowing. It's not vigorous, so it's not something which is going to damage my tissues before the day started. Like if I'm in the gym, it's going to make me sweat. It's going to help me remove the impurities. And it's the best way for me to focus my breath so I can absorb more oxygen whilst doing the gentle movements to then circulate the oxygen around the body, And I've tested gym early in the morning. For me, my early is like 5 o'clock. Yes, I've been to the gym at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I've done Tai Chi at the same time, 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I feel a lot better doing the Tai Chi at that particular time. Another favorite of mine is the running, because again, that will quickly, improve the circulation, help you eliminate waste from the body, as well as helping you to absorb oxygen. So my go-to is I would do a bit of the Tai Chi, and then I will follow it up with the running just to get the circulation good, And then I'll do the gym later on in the day because I need to keep my muscles strong and of volume. But exercise is really, really good. And it leaves you feeling light because your circulation is good. It leaves you feeling invigorated, and the blood will travel throughout all your limbs, and your blood will flow better through your brain, which will help with your cognition for long days' work. Another part of the exercise and promoting good circulation is the right foods. Eating light foods, eating, our fruits, helping to clear the system, helping to give us energy and helping to eliminate waste, with the vegetables helping to maintain the right balance of gut microbes. All of these things, your onions, they're historically known for being good for the blood. And, these things, the fruits, are good for the blood. Also, in a sense, it's a way of providing you energy without adding junk foods to your body, which gives you a false sense of energy, which will make you sluggish. So sometimes a good circulation is not necessarily just doing things, but it's about eliminating things. So you can maintain a good circulation just by eliminating junk foods, or halving your junk foods, or eating minimal junk foods. Last thing, herbs. Herbs are very good. Things like nettle have been known to improve, destroy basically bad bacteria in our blood, where you got things like ginseng, which is used to help promote good circulation. So, when we do get into trouble, herbs can be used directly to help really cure certain pathologies within our blood. But, when you're going through the herbs route, you have to be careful. Don't take my advice, do seek someone who's a specialist in that area. There's plenty in London. But yeah, promoting good circulation is about what we're eating as well. So, just show you quickly just what the circulatory system looks like in a holistic sense. I do love this app. So if I share, yeah. So that's basically our system. That's our beating heart. That's our, let me remove the lungs. Okay. So yeah, so what we can see our ventricles here and our atrium. And then what's nice, or what the body does well, it introduces valves. So these valves, can you see them here? Opening and shutting. That basically prevents the backflow of blood in the wrong direction. And it does happen through things like heart disease, or when the heart becomes and the circulatory system becomes weaker. Sometimes you can get what we call regurgitation, which is basically blood traveling back in the wrong direction. And in here you can see all our main arteries going away from the heart, going into the lungs. And yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. This is what we have in our body, the beautiful drum that keeps on playing, the eternal music. But yeah, so everything red is representing our artery. So it's hard to navigate on this computer. Can't quite centralize it. But yeah, so we've got our arteries, and as you can see, our arteries and veins, yeah, they travel everywhere through the body as highways. And then we've also got the veins, which alongside, basically, they kind of mirror each other in direction. So blood is always constantly going to tissues and then going back to the heart. Right, so yeah, I think I finished there.
Yes, thank you, Christos. Wow, the nice presentation introducing our circulatory system, this river of life, the river of blood.
Mm.
And all different elements that are within it. Yeah, because we're gonna go into a little bit more of that stuff in a few moments.
Mm.
Are there any questions before we go forward? As we enter into, because I'm gonna go more into a Tai Chi or an exercise point of view, but more of a Tai Chi exercise perception. And we just coming out of more of a therapeutic appreciation of it. We were doing
No, I haven't got any questions. It's memories of being younger and being taught these things, and then you suddenly forget all about them. And then I start recognizing some of the names, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah. So it's just memory call of what you've learned in the past in biology, which is really good.
It's important. Yeah, man, it's important to review this stuff every so often to get a recap of the majesticness internally. Yeah, it's we just live with it every day. And then unless you're actually working in that field, your appreciation of it is not similar. That's really good to hear that. Right, I think if we are there's no other questions, I think we'll move on to the second part of this presentation. So I'm gonna review some of the stuff that Christos just mentioned and went through because it's all a part of it. Christos went into some details that I won't be going into. I'll be skating over them, but because it's all a part of the process, it's good that we're in touch with this river of life that's taking place. So we've reviewed this idea that the blood flows throughout the body, but where does it come from? Where does this river of life come from? Or where does it emanate from? Where's the spring of this well? And it's in the bone. And from birth, or from before we're born, while we're in the womb, until we ascend, this process is taking place, restoring this river, restoring this flow of blood in the body. And the parts that are marked in red are representing the bone marrow. And in the infant, you can see that the whole of the body is producing various types of blood cells. And as you mature, and by the time you hit 25, thereabouts and older, there are certain parts that are holding more yellow marrow, and them ones that are holding more fat deposits in that space there. Our bones do more than just hold us together, more than just a structure that operates as a framework for activity. And this is where our exercise comes in that we've spoken about. This is where our static postures, isometric training, or bouncing, or our activities that involve any kind of compression that gets involved. And this is why we practice that stuff quite a lot. This is the reason why Tai Chi actually is reported to resolve so many ailments. So within the bone marrow, as we described, we have this red bone marrow and yellow. The red bone marrow produces all of our red blood cells, as well as lymph cells. And then our yellow bone marrow, as we said, it produces or it stores fat. And in cases of emergency, this is life-threatening events when we require more blood, then we're able to actually convert the stuff that's stored in the yellow marrow into red blood cells. So this is what it looks like. Within the bone, all this stuff fusing out between the endocrine cells, the platelets, eosinophils, the basophils, neutrophils, And all those different fields are really resolving viruses, bacteria, damaged cells, and that kind of stuff. So all that stuff is born out from the bone to enter into the stream of life. And itself, the blood can be divided. And as we see, blood is just about half of the quantity of this liquid. We have a plasma, which takes up a large percentage of it. And then we have our very small percentage, which holds white blood cells and platelets. But it's the plasma, in most cases, this water that is held within, that can become also stagnant. But the problem that we may find when this takes place, as it comes out of the bone marrow and enters into circulation, that we may find that the actual vessels are constricted or they're tight. So when the stuff is trying to flow through, it's restricted. And in that restriction there, we can have a series of different events manifesting from that. When we're engaging in our Tai Chi exercises or Qigong, because we can't even really say like stretching activities and strengthening activities as a statement for the two of them. It's better we use a broader term like Tai Chi and Qigong, because it's a process. We can't sit down and do a series of, well, we can sit down and do a series of stretches and open up, but because it's a squeeze and stuff that's going on, so you're lengthening your muscles, which are compressing the vessels, and as you relax, then the vessels are given space to open up. So we can actually affect it this way. But what's more effective is a holistic approach, which incorporates your breath, which incorporates deep breathing. And when we actually enter into this process of being able to deep breathe, and that is through the nose, mainly, with the mouth closed, we start to create nitric oxide, because in this nose area, we have a membrane that releases nitric oxide when it's stimulated through the breath as we breathe in. And as we breathe in, it enters into our circulation through the lungs. So as it enters into our lungs, through what we understand now of this capillary system, and through the capillaries and the exchange of oxygen and blood, this nitric oxide is able to enter into the bloodstream, and then it circulates through. The heart pumping this process here. Within these walls, and we're going to go through it in a moment, within these walls, these arteries as well, we also have the ability to release nitric oxide. So we have two things going on here. We have the circulation from the heart, so the blood circulation from the heart, and then we also have the vessels. And these two have an ability to release this nitric oxide. So we're going to go into nitric oxide in a few moments. So as part of the process as well of the circulation, which is just as important as the heart itself pumping, is the second heart, or the calf muscle. So when blood is returned back up, because blood is moved along the body through muscle contraction and relaxation, but when it comes to the lower limb, because of pressure or gravity, the circulation doesn't just flow up against just freely. It needs a little bit of support. So then it's the contraction of the muscles that allow the support. So if you're doing bouncing, by doing raising your legs alternatively, walking on the squat, by standing on your toes, by walking on tiptoes, and such activities, by tonifying the calf, we actually start to tonify the activity of blood return, of the waste blood back up to the heart. So then we're actually supporting this flow. But it gets sluggish, especially when we have cold feet or cold toes. Circulation is a bit slow. So therefore, we have to work on releasing the calf muscle and then doing some bouncing activities to actually strengthen the muscle and support this flow. So within these arteries and veins, we have various layers. And there's 2 layers here, which are of vital importance. So in this endomethium, this is that layer there, the innermost layer is where this nitric oxide is released into the bloodstream. So it's created along the vessels as well. And the muscle that is around the actual inner layer can contract and relax. And that contraction and relaxation is also a conscious activity. So you can actually consciously affect these muscles here. And that's through the way in which we contract and relax our muscles, where we actually literally squeeze our fists and relax. Again, will increase blood flow to the hand. And that's because of the smooth muscle. And this is within arteries and veins. We have a similar layouts. One of the main important reasons for this mention of nitric oxide, because nitrogen and oxygen are in our atmosphere. We have a high amount of nitrogen, almost 80%, and we have almost 20 nitrogen and almost 20% of oxygen within our atmosphere. And it's almost like the mucosal membrane within the nasal passage. But it's also the cilia or the hairs that are stimulating that mucosa. And that come like a spark plug, let's say. Like the friction that's created stimulates this nitrogen and oxygen to create nitric oxide. So if we're breathing through the mouth, it doesn't happen. But when we start to increase this activity, and we can also get this from food. Just briefly, I'm going to mention that. Food that is dark, kale, beetroots, any dark leaf greeny stuff, any dark vegetables, any dark fruit is quite high in nitric oxide. But naturally, we can do this through our breathing. And when that takes place, one of the main things that nitric oxide does, it causes vasodilation. As we can see, a normal blood vessel on the left. And when it goes through vasodilation, it expands. So then we got a greater flow of blood. So if we're breathing, and I'll say each person is unique on the length of time. Let's say we're observing that there's a warmth, a tingliness in this area, a warmth or heat that's generated in this area, then we know that we've definitely exceeded the amount. We're good. You can achieve this within 5 minutes. Just increase. You can increase it from the research within just doing 1 or 2 breaths. That you instantly have an increase of this, where your arteries will actually just expand and open up, allowing more blood to flow through. But when we're under duress, under stress, when we're under pressure, when the sympathetic system is active, when we're under pressure, when we're going through a fight or flight kind of scenario, when we have anxiety, when we're worried, all these things constrict the vessels and make it tighter. This is why breathing has been promoted so much. Breathing. And it's because of this nitric oxide. When we're increasing that breath, let's say at nighttime before we go to bed, and we've had a stressful day and we're really tired, when we practice a 2-3 minute breathing practice, we're actually now opening up these vessels and allowing the blood to flow, which clears up the head, makes the head you feel more at ease. And then you're able to sleep better because the blood's flowing better. This is why breathing before going to bed and breathing generally throughout the day is so beneficial for maintaining health. This is what we're doing. So if we have issues at night sleeping, it's for some of us, it might be a bit extreme, this approach, yeah? Because sometimes this doesn't happen because there are other benefits, like the reduction of inflammation, the nitric acid, the NO, nitric oxide. If you cover your mouth while you sleep, let's say, there's tape you can purchase. There's a tape that seal the whole of the mouth, or you can use sellotape and just put a little piece just from the top to the bottom to keep the mouth sealed. Or you can invest in something that you strap here and it opens up your nostrils, so your nostrils are more expanded as you sleep, and this will increase your nitric oxide production, and it will aid in recovery of body tissue. This will help when you've trained to actually improve your repair. And nitric oxide, for all the wonderful thing that it does, is something that at the moment the technology is not available to actually capture it in a bottle, capture it in a tablet, capture it in a liquid, and actually take it. As valuable as this is to the body, and as abundant as it is in the atmosphere, because even in the atmosphere, past a certain level, NO, then becomes a pollutant, or it becomes a toxin. So then it has to operate within a very small margin. And as it flows in the atmosphere, this NO, it flows within our bloodstream as well, within a certain ratio. And it requires a spark for the two of them to come together and form and create this new substance. But that substance only lasts for 3 seconds, they find. That's why it's hard to capture it. So when we create it in the nose, it takes about 3 seconds for that nitric oxide to dissipate and no longer be effective. But because it's in the nostrils, it goes straight down before a second completed, and it's able to enter into the bloodstream. If we're doing it through the mouth, then we're not getting that entering into the bloodstream. Then it can't even activate the cells within the arteries itself. So with the veins, because I got a bit carried away there, with the veins in the back of the legs, we also have issues where as the blood flows, it can flow too much in certain spaces, too much blood flowing there. Blood flow is good because we talk about stagnant flowing blood, but sometimes it can flow too much. And in those cases, we have people have what is called varicose veins. And varicose veins, they have found that varicose veins can be repaired, or can be, because what it is with the varicose veins, it looks like the cells themselves have lost organization. So the whole tissue area has become wobbly, yes, or has lost its organization, yeah, but it's because the cells are no longer aligned. So they found through the nitric oxide that they're able to repair some of these areas. But that's through doing clinical trials, clinical work. And again, it can't be captured in a bottle. So the thing where through diet and through exercise and through activity, that this has to be focused upon. And there's a lot of us that suffer from varicose veins, or the weakening of the vein walls. So we have what Christos described. We have blockages going on. But you see all them different minerals, those different deposits, those different fatty deposits. When the artery gets stiff and it's not moving, not contracting, it's not expanding, then this is how these blockages can take place. Not again through lack of activity and exercise. So we can strengthen, we can reactivate the smooth muscle. We can make the harder artery more supple through our activity, through our swinging movements, through our vibrating movements, through our contracting and relaxing movements, through our spinal rotation movements, from our internal stretch movements, while doing all those activities, choosing a breath technique to follow it, to accompany it. Whether this is a reverse breathing technique or a normal breathing technique, or the normal, I would say, is turtle breathing, where you're breathing in and out through your mouth, and it's a continual breath. So hopefully we understand how this pain stuff come along. That when we have vasoconstriction, or when we have blockages in the arteries, then blood becomes stagnant in these areas. And as a result of reduced circulation in these spaces here, inflammation occurs. And as a result, we have reduced movement, or whatever area of the body it is. And then this produces pain. So we increase movement, we increase our breath, we reduce muscle inflammation, we improve our movement. And all of that starts to activate what we call the endocannabinoid system. And this reduces pain directly. So here we're just looking at this, the cell walls and how wide they look, and how expanded they look, compared to what we saw a moment ago, how thick the wall is and how not much is flowing through. So hopefully, through what we've just discussed there, we appreciate this nitric oxide, how it increases blood flow by affecting the smooth muscle, which causes a dilation or opening of the artery, which therefore makes the blood flow better. And this is just a schematic depiction of the process, because nitric oxide can also be, you can also convert it from L-arginine and L-citrulline. L-citrulline can also be found in melon. And I think with the research, they were describing how with this L-citrulline, that when it converts into NO through food, it actually circulates into the bloodstream. But when L-arginine is taken in, and we get this more from roots and vegetables, from my memory, then it gets destroyed in the digestive process and is unable to enter into the bloodstream. So we may have higher amounts of nitric oxide from different food, but it depends upon the food, the quantity that the body is able to actually take on and use it for the process that we're referring to here. But when looking at it from a therapeutic point of view, and we have an area knocked, or we have an injury to a particular area, then we produce this nitric oxide, which ultimately relaxes the muscle and reduces pain. As a result, we have reduction of we have reduced inflammation, we have improved vasodilation, and we have improved angiogenesis. And this idea here is that from existing blood vessels, we create new capillaries. Yeah, we create new. So this river and these streams that flow off of it, yeah, they are being replaced, the walls. We have a beautiful recycling process that takes place internally. And all of this comes from nitrogen and oxygen, but nitric oxide in the bloodstream. And remember, we breathe every day. We breathe every day, but a lot of the time we're breathing through the mouth. But even when we're breathing through the nose, sometimes we breathe inconsistently, so we don't build up. And also, sometimes we breathe in and out, so we stimulate, but as we're breathing out through the nose, we're actually blowing out the NO, and we're not actually taking it in. So it has to be done with, let's say, with clarity, certain technique. So when we've got these issues in the body, like damaged cells or bacteria, viruses, or anything like that within the body, within the blood circulation, within this river, we've got our own fighters out here that's doing activity. Chase until it's consumed. Just watching this here, it's no different from what a grape molecule does. A grape molecule, a seeded grape. Same thing. Because within the blood, the molecule within grapes, when there's a virus, it's the same way. Well, actually, it's a different way because hair is running away. But with grapes, it's like this: the virus or the cell that is broken or diseased, fragmented or broken, which whatever status is in, it has an affinity towards the cell instead. So then the grape just engulfs it and breaks it down within its space. And all that again takes place within the blood. All right, so before we finish up, because we've looked at this blood from the vessels and from where it is created from and how it flows. When we are aware that blood is magnetic and we have electrons flowing in this liquid of life as well. And when we have balanced electromagnetic system or balanced electromagnetic field, when the field around us is balanced, then the blood cells are actually able to organize themselves in such a way. But these are representing actually blood cells. And that's the hemoglobin or the iron within, which is able to organize blood in this fashion here. So it just doesn't move randomly or chaotically. And that is a result of when we're utilizing magnetic technology, or when we're like lying on a bed with magnets underneath it as a bed sheet. And that iron transports and is flowing all through and around the body. So this is how we would use that technology there. We use the negative side of the magnet and we place them either side to help to harmonize and balance. That helps them to flow, because it's a thing to get correct, whether to know to use the positive side or to use the negative side. And through the research, there's an increase of health benefits through using the negative side of the magnet and placing it on the body. If it's too strong, it may burn the actual skin. So one has to be mindful of that. So we've looked at briefly that we know the blood is magnetic. We know everything is circulating around the body. But we also have our atmosphere that we've spoken about. So we've got this nitrogen and oxygen that's entering into our system that's directly affecting our circulatory system. We also have the other elements, such as the sun, which is also affecting our circulatory system. And we're in a period now where sun cycle or sunspots are entering into their maximum cycle. And this is going to have a direct effect on every aspect of our being. As we've just come from an electromagnetic topic, then from that perspective, it's going to have quite a drastic effect, because it's just a subtle fluctuation and shift, which is enough to take the body off balance. And because of our electromagnetic fields, if it's not in harmony, it's not balanced, it's not in resonance, the earth itself is what we're talking about, in resonance. If between you and the earth, there's a lack of resonance, then when these events take place, it has an adverse effect, increase in blood pressure, where we start to feel nausea, sickness, headache, confusion, dizziness, eye complaints, pressure in different parts of our body and head. And that is all from the solar activity that's taking place. And we're entering into this cycle right now. The breathing helps to rebalance and offset this process. It's found back in the 1800s, in the early 900s, late 1800s, that people were breathing an average of 6 to 8 breaths in a minute. Now, on average, we're breathing almost 20 breaths in a minute. Each blood type is connected to a personality, the blood that flows through our body to a personality or a way in which we act. So the research is not conclusive, although you can go to the NHS website and you can find information on this, which I was quite surprised myself, that each blood type. So if you're an O type, come to find that these people are quite joyful, quite happy, quite confident. An A type, because each type comes through at different times of human development. And it's all about the diet and how we change according to research. So when we was O type, then they say more hunter-gatherer. But as we went through and we started to do agriculture, then we entered into more of an A, I believe. And then when we went further forward, then we went to an AB. So all to do with the way in which our food has impacted our body. And as we're aware, as them said, you are what you eat, or are you? Are you who you are, or is the food thinking on your behalf? Are you a result of your own innate thoughts, or are you a result of what you consume, which determines your personality? And I think this is one of the reasons, the last point here, this is one of the reasons religiously why I feel that, let's say Christianity would say that one shouldn't eat the blood of a creature, of no living life form, that the blood's supposed to be drained out, and that you're only supposed to eat the meat, or call it kosher, let's say, whatever meat that is, but the blood's supposed to be drained. We're not supposed to take no blood from another life form, but from a Christian point of view, the only blood you're supposed to take is the blood of Christ. But then let's say that we look at another religion, you absorb blood and take it in, and they are connected to the earth, and more connected to the earth because of the life blood that they're taking in. So these are options that humans have. But this river of life is sacred. One should keep it uncontaminated to the best of one's ability, and it will do you well for all your days. All right. I'm going to finish the presentation there.
Yes, thank you, Sahu. Yeah, again, new interesting perspective. Yeah, especially with the nitrogen oxide, you
Yeah.
know, it's yeah, something you see, but it's not something you always think of,
Yeah,
you
you know,
know.
man, we doing these exercises and we're breathing, and I know there's so many other chemicals that we've discussed in the past.
Mm,
Stuff like, man, endocannabinoids we've gone through, dopamine, all those different neurochemicals and neurotransmitters that are
mm,
circulating in the body, that from doing activity and feeling good, that we refer
mm,
to and talk about.
mhm.
That's where most of our minds are, isn't it? That's where it is.
Yeah, yeah,
This NO.
yeah. So including serotonin and all of
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Melatonin is another one that we spend a lot of time discussing, and it's
Mm,
also a part of this process.
mhm,
Nitric oxide is a part of that process, and I think I know of it more along those lines, but that's
mm.
not really pliable from a physical perspective or doing exercises.
Yeah. And you always, when I hear of nitric oxide, the mind always thinks of the earth.
Yeah, because that's how it's been promoted for a long time.
Mm,
Nitrogen and oxygen. I think it was only discovered literally 20 years ago as the benefits that it had for us.
right.
The brother who discovered it got a Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize for service to humanity, for
Okay.
discovering something that is beneficial to humanity.
Mhm,
Yeah, man, it's the same nitric oxide.
mhm. Okay.
It-
Right.
so it's only recent, and that right now it's fascinating. They're trying to create it. They are trying to create it in a bottle, because in doing my research here, we come to find that there was a very small group of people that were utilizing this technology during COVID time here, because there's only very few machines. I think maybe 20 in America.
Mhm,
So I think they may have only got captured a couple thousand people, but within that, they was able to prevent. There's there's a lot of usage of nitric oxide in China. China has invested a lot of money into the equipment, but the equipment is like highly specialized under
mhm.
regulation. It can't just be done by a person without a professorship. You know what I'm saying? You got to be a professor to actually use the technology at the moment. Yeah, man. But because it's what I never mentioned, and I was supposed to mention it, I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but it's because of this. That's why I mentioned COVID, because it's antiviral and it's antibacterial. I would
Mm.
like to say fungal, but I might be throwing it out too far. But I do know it's antiviral and antibacterial. So when
Okay.
we're creating the nitric oxide and it's entering into the bloodstream, it's killing
Mhm.
off the viruses.
Okay.
Killing it off in the bloodstream. Any virus, that is the body's way of cleansing the bloodstream. Is what I come to realize
Mm.
through the
Yeah.
nitric
No,
oxide.
I mean, it would make sense. We know that breathing alone and just the whole alkalizing, the whole oxidation and stuff like that, we
Yeah.
know doing benefits anyway, but we don't really look at the components of the breath that's doing that work,
Mm.
because we know oxygen is mainly for energy, you
And
know.
brain food.
Yeah, but then we've got other parts that must be doing other things. So it has to have a role. If there's nitrogen in the air and we're breathing it in,
I'm telling you,
it's there for a reason.
we've grown as and in a like a symbiotic relationship with this planet Earth. But it's only
Mm,
ever so recently that there's become a separation between humanity and Earth.
mhm,
We fight in
mhm.
the very atmosphere that we live in.
Yeah, that's why we got all these diseases because there's only one winner.
You know what I'm saying? And if we can't, if this relationship can't work, then you're gonna drop out. And this is the part of middle Dantian training. Because you know when you do lower Dantian training and we're working through the 5 elements and the sexual alchemy, the sexual energy of creation, and you've harmonized or you're balancing that or you're aware of that, and then we enter into the heart center, the heartbeat, like what we describe here, which is connecting with Earth and connecting the heartbeat with Earth's heartbeat, so they synchronize as one, which they call the Schumann resonance, isn't it? Even though that resonance is fluctuating, but it's not what it was.
Yeah, and it gives people their concept of time.
Yeah. That is why time shifts when you enter meditative states. Because you're there and it feels like you've been there for 2 hours and then it's been 2 minutes. You're like, the moment feels like, wow. And then it shifts the other way, where you be there for like an hour and then it feels like you've been there like 10 minutes.
Yeah. I always suppose it's better to have time moving slower.
Yeah.
Then you're on God's time.
It's true. One day becomes 1,000 years, you're saying. That's God time there, you know. If you're gonna say God time, one day becomes 1,000 years. Like sit down in your if we can scale that down,
then well, I'm not gonna do the calculation, but 1 minute would be 100 years or
okay.
10,000 years.
If you say that, that means, because I know I've experienced it, so I understand them, that in a minute, in a moment, in like a flash, but let's say a minute, you can experience a whole life.
Yeah.
Live 100 years, 80 years. You can live and die in your mind, experience a whole life like you lived it, and it'd be like within 1 minute.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're dreaming. You go to bed for 2 seconds, and you've had a whole family. You've gone through your schooling, had your family, conquered the world, and died, and you woke up.
Only if the blood is flowing, you know. Only if the blood allow you.
So divided by 24 hours, then divide by 60. Yeah, it's about where am I going with my calculation? Yeah, 1 minute will be like 69 years.
I don't know how you figured that out.
I don't know either.
But if we can enter slowing everything down, and we can make a minute be 60 years, wow, even that's 1,000 years is a bit hard to perceive, to live a whole day manifesting 1,000 years.
That's where the relaxation comes, because you can only do that, get into that perception of time with relaxation. Because see, when I'm doing the Tai Chi, now if I'm like tense and I'm doing a static and I'm like, oh my goodness, how long do I have to hold the position? And then I check the time 5, 6 times and the clock is still going slow.
Yeah. Time hasn't changed.
When I'm relaxed and then I'm not conscious of the time. I even make an effort not to look at the time, and I'm relaxed. It goes quick. That 2-minute static flies by when I'm relaxed. When I'm tense, I'm looking at that time, that 2 minute ain't no 2 minutes. It's like 6 minutes, you know. So there's something about being relaxed and going into a deeper realm. And it's almost like you have to go inside of yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You can't go outside. The more external you are, the longer time seems to be.
You got to follow your blood vessels, your heartbeat. You got to feel the valves open and close. Imagine you start listening to these subtle sensations in the body.
Yeah.
I'm sure we answered that question there, because I was reading the chat there, and Karen was asking about, to get the true effects of NO, we have to breathe through our nose. Yeah,
Mm,
that's correct. You have to breathe. You have to do it through the nose and the mouth closed,
mhm,
and
Yeah,
that's
trying to see where I could put my hand
every
up.
day.
Hi, good evening, good evening. Brilliant
mm,
presentation. So what I just wanted to build on what you were saying around the breathing in through the nose, you were also saying that if you breathe out through the nose, you could potentially be breathing out some of the NO as well. So to combat that, would it be beneficial to breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth?
Yeah, we can do this technique there.
Okay, thank you.
That's one of
yeah.
the techniques that one can utilize. Breathe
And but
in.
when you're breathing out through the mouth,
Mm,
it is, usually you would do it if you're running because you want to try and get rid of more carbon dioxide.
okay.
But then there's something with breathing that breathing, and it might be an indirect answer, but when you're breathing in through the nose, because of the passageway is a lot smaller than the mouth.
Mhm.
So when you're breathing out, there's almost like this brown paper bag effect, where there's still a lot of volume or still pressure created within the body through breathing through the nose. So I almost wonder if that pressure that we have with natural breathing in and out through the nose might be more beneficial than,
Oh, okay. Breathing out through your mouth. So you should still
yeah.
breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, but maybe slow your breath.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a direct answer. It's just kind of a thought.
Yeah.
There
But
are
I mean, naturally, breathing,
do that.
if I'm looking at breathing for breathing sake itself, you know, breathing in through the nose is better anyway.
Right. Yeah.
It's better
Or
for the
breathing
body.
out. Yeah. I wasn't sure when you were trying to exhale, whether
Mm,
that is, and it's really funny because sometimes you go to people, they always say, and breathe in through your mouth and breathe out through. And I'm thinking, well, no, you're meant to breathe in through your nose. But I never know
mm,
whether you're meant to breathe out through your nose as well or out through your mouth.
Can
mm,
apply either technique, innit? They both have their different benefits
Okay.
when you're
Thank you.
doing it through the mouth. But with the nitrogen oxide, we have 3 seconds for it to disintegrate or fall apart. So if you do breathe in,
Hold it for 3 seconds.
basically, innit? Because by
Yeah.
the time you breathe
Back
out,
again.
the nitric oxide
mm.
has subsided, it's gone. So then by the time you
But,
breathe in again,
but then if you're breathing properly, you're going to be breathing in for 3 seconds
yeah, that's correct.
anyway.
Yeah. So within that 3 seconds of breathing in, that's why there's so many different techniques. But within that, that's why we can jump with all these different suggestions and have a technique based on it, because those techniques do exist. So
Mm,
that if you are doing a long breath and it's longer than 3 seconds in, it's true. By the time you capture that next breath in, you've already utilized the NO. 3 seconds. I
mm.
mean,
There's a really good book about breathing, definitely, really, really good book. I think it's called Breath. I'm just looking at my Audible. Yeah, latest groundbreaking,
they have
and
this.
it talks about all the breathing types in the sense of mouth breathers and the research and how they have problems with their whole posture, even their facial structure is affected by breathing through the mouth,
Mhm.
So it's a really good book. You can get on Audible as well. Yeah,
Definitely got
it's
to
called
breathe through
Breath.
the nose and keep this mouth sealed. You need to keep that mouth shut. As,
Do you
as
know the author, Christoph? Oh, lovely. Breath by who? Denis
James,
Ovalon. Oh, perfect.
it's a really good book. And this man
Yeah,
done, as Christoph said, he's done a lot of good research. Is he a professor?
I'm not too sure, but it's definitely the best that I've read on the topic in the everyday people form. So the language, it's not like the language is hard. It's just a nice, easy
Read.
read.
And his
But there's a lot of
presentations are really good.
information, there's a lot of science.
His presentations are really good. He gives good explanation. Even though I've got the book, I probably listened to it more than I actually read the book.
No.
After discovering the book was so good, I'm like, I'm about to just listen to this brother.
So I think you probably answered it. So in terms of which I thought was really fascinating about the blood types, would you then, in essence, kind of agree that you should be more trying to eat to your blood type? And
Yeah.
also, can you change your blood type if you change your diet or something like that? Are there ways to, not that you would want to, but just out of curiosity? Or would it more just be like more toxins to the body if you don't kind of like eat to your blood type?
I mean, with the eating to the blood type, your body's always going to show you the signs,
Yeah.
especially when you're paying more attention. I know there's certain foods.
Yeah, that's me. I'm an A, and that's why every time I try and go to a carnivore diet, it sets me off in such a wrong road. Yeah, I already read that years and years ago.
This is for everybody else who ain't read that book. He writes for the blood type, the brother who done all that research into different blood types and the type of food that they should eat. And I think we're through evolution and that. It's quite an old book. I'm not sure. That's a really good question, isn't it? Can the blood type be changed? I mean, well, the original is O. And you have recessive, rhesus. Can you change from a recessive to non-recessive then? I'm unsure about that one there. And then if you're A, can you turn to so if you're AB, can you transform to an A or a B? That's profound.
I mean, I've not heard of people being able to change their blood type, but I do wonder. I mean, I've not studied that side so much. I do often wonder if certain environments will bring out parts of the blood types where it changes slightly, not significantly, but just slightly to accommodate the environment it's in. There's so much we don't understand about the body, but what we do know, if you was to live in another environment,
interesting,
that you're gonna learn to adapt to the foods of that environment. It might take a little while, but eventually your body will definitely make some type of adaptation without no compromise.
It's a possibility, isn't it? I was wondering if because it's resonance, and if blood can change, like if you're drinking or taking in blood, because you're talking about through food and environmental change, but if you're drinking blood, let's say you're digesting blood, and blood is entering into your bloodstream because you're digesting it, and it's in your whole system there. That's an interesting one, because I have a feeling there's a possibility that a change could take place, definitely in the bloodstream. I don't know if it could affect the bone matrix, the bone marrow.
So I was thinking of like blood transfusions, which I know they always try and give you the same blood of your blood type, but if you're having a blood transfusion, you're still taking blood from somebody else who's going to be slightly different to yourself. And then if that then becomes your blood that's circulating, is that slightly changing your blood? Or it's quite complex. I know.
From that point of view, yes, the blood has changed. Yes,
but so I was wondering, only for a while, because I mean, I'm sure that when you have enough blood keeping you alive for that cell, so you'd have to have enough of your blood to keep you alive. Secondly, you're adding more volume to the blood. which your body will still have to get used to. But then the red blood cells are only going to last 120 days.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
the new ones that generate will then be your own natural ones, back to your own blood.
Yeah, I think so.
Could be.
Okay.
Interesting. I
Unless it
know.
got mutated somehow through the this other stuff entering into the bloodstream, and it changed the DNA. That's the only way in it, that the DNA's got to get changed.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's an
DNA.
interesting question.
A lot to think about on that one there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a contact that might be able to answer that a lot better.
Cool. Thank you. No, I find it's very fascinating. Last question. So it's more centered around iron and the role that iron plays in the blood. And if you've got how you can potentially have an iron deficiency but not be anemic at the same time, because normally people always wrap up iron deficiency anemia within the same bucket. What's the difference between being just an iron deficiency and the iron deficiency anemia, if that makes sense, and the role that the iron plays in the blood? So I know it transports the oxygen, right?
Yeah, so it helps with the makeup of the hemoglobin, and then with the hemoglobin, with the production of the hemoglobin, that's a component that contains iron to help with the binding of the oxygen.
Right. Okay.
So when we're looking at the iron deficient anemia, we're looking at basically that hemoglobin, the production of it struggles to happen without without any iron. And then I think you just got anemia, which could be something to do with your low red blood cell count. But I
Okay.
believe there might be other factors that will lead to that, which is basically not related to the iron deficiency.
Okay.
So I think, there's so much ways someone can become anemic, even just not eating, not eating the right nutrients, just not eating well, not drinking enough. The whole process of starvation can make one a little bit more anemic. And then I'm sure, when you look at the body holistically, one's body ability for their body to produce or convert the foods that they're eating, if they have any gastric problems. And then another problem where one can get anemic is if they've got a bleed in an area that shouldn't happen. If someone's got also like cancer where the cancer cells are robbing them of the nutrients, then they can become anemic that way. So
Thank
you. There's
That's-
a few ways.
Yeah, does that give some clarity?
It did, yes. And I'm not anemic, so I was just inquiring because I know someone that is.
You don't sound anemic. You will not be asking questions at this time. If you would, you
Mind
would
fully
find
be
off.
active and engaged. But it's good to be aware of these different terms and bring clarity to us again. So thank you for asking the question.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you also.
People from the Western world compared to non-Western, people from non-Western world, they tend to function more so on they use their right side hemisphere. They lead by that more so than someone from the Western hemisphere. And I don't know if in your experiences, if that has been the case, because it mentioned that non-Western societies, they tend to be more creative. They look on things on the creative aspect, whereas someone from the Western world, they tend to use their analytical thinking, and they go at things through that way initially. So I don't know.
Partially correct, I would say, from my perspective.
Right.
I would say, yeah, the Western Hemisphere has this logical way or approach, but what I would say a bit more clearer though, from what I think, that it's separation. So in the Western Hemisphere, let's say, it's either you're creative or you're logical, but there's a separation.
Right.
From an African perspective, I know we say they are more left-handed, left brain, but that's from Western perspective mindset, who's separated.
Right.
So they're going to say on the other side that they are more left brain. But what I think is that they are more unified.
Right.
Those people of the Southern Hemisphere, older cultures, ancient cultures, it's not to say that they were left brain more or they were right brain dominant. They were left and right brain unified.
Right.
It doesn't make a person left or right dominated, but it makes a person complete. Or you
I
enter.
think that's what it's saying, actually.
Come on, it must be saying.
But yeah, that's what it's saying. It's more so the right side hemisphere looks at things as unified rather than separation. There's a separation because you need both, really. Whereas the Western, maybe if you're looking at Western logic, Western, being led by a Western.
Because the West is like art. The West is like science, but then science is separate to art, and art is separate to science. This separation, but then art and science is one, which is left and right hemisphere coming together and acting as one. It's like the use of, let's say, mathematics, which is a logical approach, using again one side of the brain, but then using intuition. Trying to calculate the same thing, but that's using the other side of the brain. But then these things fuse together. What are you saying there, Christoph?
I think he does separate the left and the right. I think it's just more for the reader, just to get that kind of comparison of the left and the right. But, what you're saying about is be more the whole brain, you don't hear much people say it like that, even though, you feel that that's more of the reality.
They're insinuating it, but they're not explaining that. So therefore, either they don't understand that. They don't actually understand that point there. Because I still think we're generally thinking quite Western, how we're raised and how we're taught.
Oh yeah. I mean, just
separation.
I mean, just the language we have to use, this English language, will automatically put that in that domain. And I think when you got an author like Ra'ul Nefer Amen, he understands that, and when you go through the book, it starts off it's like a journey, the book. The book gets you thinking in a certain way at the start, and then it leads you into other parts that you understand better if you read the first part.
Right.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think little practical ways that we can use the brain more from a neurological perspective is do things in a more holistic way. So, start brushing your teeth with your left hand if you're right-handed, and vice versa. Now if I jog around the park, I just don't jog one way because I realize I'm just going clockwise or anti-clockwise. So now I will go anti-clockwise, and then I will do the same thing clockwise just to get the brain working. So I think there's so many things on the day-to-day that we can do to try and rebalance our brain. And I think even though it's something I need to do, but probably learning a new language, one which is more, Afrocentric, or even just different or more Asian. I think that's also something like even Arabic. I think, again, that's a way that will start to get the mind more integrated and balanced. But yeah, I see all the time in the Western world. I think people now are starting to try and balance things a little bit better, but everyone's still thinking very narrow. Everyone's still within the construct of this English language, very limited in their expression, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think the English language is limited. I think it's just the use of the language is limited.
Mm.
And then I think we use words, but we don't use long sentences enough.
Well, nowadays,
Yeah,
that's true.
So Hazel, did that bring any clarity to what you was pondering?
Yeah, that was great. That was great. That was good. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone, for another day in the month, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, sending people the link and stuff and encouraging them to come. And yeah, we shall see you again in the last Thursday of the month of October. Yeah.
It was great. Thank you guys very much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank
See you
for
next
doing that.
time. Bye.
And we'll catch you next month, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.